Welcome to Life Stories. Today, we're diving into a powerful tale of family, sacrifice, and self-discovery. It's a story about the weight of expectations, the pain of betrayal, and ultimately, the journey to reclaiming one's life. Follow the emotional roller coaster of a woman who, after giving everything to support her family, finds herself abandoned in the most difficult moment of her life. This story is about finding strength, letting go of the past, and realizing that the family we choose can sometimes mean more than the one we're born into. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and begin today's story. It had been a long year, and I was starting to wonder if I'd ever catch a break. My name is Samantha, and as the youngest in my family, I had always found myself trying to make things right, fixing problems, picking up the pieces when they shattered, and carrying the weight of everyone's expectations on my shoulders. But that weight had become too much to bear. It all started with Rachel, my older sister. She was 3 years older than me, always the go-getter, the one who had everything figured out. At least, that's how it seemed to everyone else. But a year ago, everything changed. Rachel didn't get the promotion she'd worked so hard for, and the disappointment hit her like a freight train. I had never seen her so devastated, so raw. The tears she shed that day were ones I would never forget. "I can't believe they picked someone else over me," she sobbed into my shoulder, her voice shaky with a mixture of frustration and confusion. "Do you know how hard I've worked? How many hours I put in? How could they do this to me?" I remember sitting there, in my small apartment, feeling a tightness in my chest. I had just graduated, and I had been so proud of the little apartment I rented on my own. My life was beginning, and I was excited, but Rachel's tears seemed to pour over everything, drowning me in her pain. I thought it would pass. I thought maybe a few weeks, a few months at most, and she'd find her footing again. But it didn't happen, not for her. Months went by, and Rachel's disappointment turned into something darker. A complete breakdown. She quit her job in a dramatic storm of anger and pride, burning bridges faster than I could count. I couldn't understand it. Rachel, the woman who had always seemed so composed, now seemed lost in a fog. A year passed, and still, she hadn't found another job. She wasn't trying very hard, either. "Too perfect," she'd say about every opportunity that came her way. "They want too much. It's not worth it. I'm not settling for that." In the meantime, I was working overtime, taking on extra clients in my marketing job to make up for the fact that Rachel wasn't doing her part. I was supporting my parents, paying their bills, keeping food in the fridge, and ensuring Rachel could still afford therapy 4 times a week. I was paying for everything. "She's really making progress," my mom would say with a forced cheerfulness, every time I transferred another chunk of my paycheck to their account. "The therapy is helping her. She's getting better." Progress? I wasn't so sure. To me, it felt like nothing was changing. Every day, I saw my sister sitting at home, scrolling through job listings with ridiculous expectations, jobs that promised 5-day weekends and unlimited vacation time. Meanwhile, I was scrambling to keep everything together. I wanted to help her, to make her better, but no one could see how much I was giving. It felt like no one was paying attention to the sacrifices I was making. I remember one evening, after another exhausting day at work, I looked at my parents. Their faces were worn, their eyes clouded with worry, and I knew we needed something to look forward to. Something good, something to lift us all from the stress that had taken over our lives. That's when I had the idea. I would plan a trip to New York for the 3 of us. I imagined it so clearly in my mind, the perfect vacation. A time for us to reconnect and forget about everything that had been weighing on us. A luxury hotel with a view of the skyline. Private tours. Experiences tailored just for us. I wanted to give my parents the gift of joy, something they hadn't had in a long time. I spent weeks researching, organizing every detail. A cheese-tasting tour for Mom, because she had always dreamed of trying authentic Italian cheeses. A wine tasting at a vineyard for my dad, who loved a good glass of red wine. I thought it would be perfect. The thought of seeing my parents smile again, without the worry in their eyes, kept me going through the late nights of planning. I wanted to create memories with them, happy moments that we could cherish forever. And for once, I imagined we would all be able to breathe. Little did I know that life has a strange way of shifting under your feet when you least expect it. Just a day before our trip, I was driving to meet a client, my mind buzzing with thoughts of the presentation and the excitement of the upcoming vacation. Then, there was a loud crash, a screech of metal, and everything went black. The next thing I knew, I woke up in a hospital bed, every inch of my body aching as if I'd been crushed. The doctor told me I needed emergency surgery, but that I would recover. I couldn't remember much of the accident itself, just bits and pieces. But the one thing I couldn't forget was how everything changed in an instant. I was alive, but my plans, my dreams, my efforts, all of them were hanging in the balance now. The pain was unbearable at first, but as the hours passed, the painkillers kicked in and the sharpness dulled to a constant ache. I drifted in and out of consciousness, trying to make sense of everything. One moment, I had been planning our dream vacation, and the next, I was lying in a sterile hospital room, staring at the ceiling, with only the beeping of machines and the sound of distant voices to keep me company. I couldn't remember much of the accident itself, just flashes of images, the crunch of metal, the scream of tires, the overwhelming sense of helplessness as I felt my body jerk in the car. The hardest part, though, was knowing that the trip I had worked so hard to organize was now impossible. When my parents walked in, I could feel the shift in the air. My mom was holding her favorite travel purse, the one she had bought just for the trip to New York. Seeing it made my stomach drop, as if the weight of the whole situation finally hit me. I was supposed to be there with them, experiencing everything I had planned for months. But now, I was lying in a hospital bed, helpless, unable to do anything for myself. I managed to croak out an apology, my voice hoarse from the breathing tube. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, trying to get the words out despite the exhaustion. "We'll have to postpone the trip. I'll cancel everything today, and we can go when I'm better." I thought they would understand. I thought they would be disappointed. Yes, but compassionate. But what happened next was the last thing I expected. Mom's voice, calm and strangely detached, floated over to me. "Oh, there's no need to cancel anything, honey," she said. I blinked, sure that the painkillers were making me hear things wrong. "What?" I asked, my mind struggling to catch up with her words. "Your dad and I have been talking," she continued, adjusting her purse strap like it was any other conversation. "We think we should still go. You can rest here, and we'll take Rachel with us instead." I stared at her, waiting for someone to laugh or for someone to make a joke. But there was nothing. My mom's eyes were calm, almost too calm, and my dad stood silently beside her, his face unreadable. I couldn't believe it. My own family was discussing their vacation plans as though I wasn't lying here, injured and in pain, after a car accident. They had just walked into my room, and instead of offering sympathy or concern for my health, they were talking about leaving me behind. Rachel stepped forward, her expression indifferent. "You were supposed to watch the house while we were gone," she said. "Since you can't, you'll need to hire someone to make sure everything is taken care of. Make sure they're reliable." I lay there in stunned silence. I couldn't find the words. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. They were leaving me here, alone, while they went on a trip I had planned and paid for. The trip that was supposed to be for us. Mom, still in her bizarrely calm tone, added, "Rachel's been through a lot this year. She really needs this break too." And with that, they turned to leave, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. I could feel my heart breaking with each step they took toward the door. No one asked how I was feeling. No one even looked at me as if I mattered. They had already made their decision, and they walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the steady beep of the heart monitor and the cold realization that my family had abandoned me, just like that. In the hours that followed, I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I wasn't upset because I couldn't go to New York. I was devastated because they had decided. Without a second thought, That their happiness was more important than my well-being. This wasn't just about a vacation. It was about their priorities. It was about how I had given everything. And yet they couldn't even offer a moment of comfort or support when I needed it most. I wanted to cry, but my body was too weak. And the tears wouldn't come. Instead, I lay in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to process the cold reality of what had just happened. The people I had always turned to for love and support were now the ones who had turned their backs on me. The days that followed were a blur of pain, frustration, and disappointment. I was surrounded by nurses, doctors, and the sterile white walls of the hospital room. But I felt completely isolated. My family had left, and with them went any sense of support I had once felt. I was alone, physically and emotionally. The reality of what had happened, their complete disregard for my well-being. The trip they took while I lay in the hospital was too much to process. I couldn't understand how my parents, who had always taught me the value of family and loyalty, could turn their backs on me so easily. The hospital became a prison, not because of the physical constraints, but because of the emotional weight I carried. Every minute felt like an eternity. Without my phone, I had no idea what was going on with my family. And honestly, I didn't want to know. But life has a strange way of bringing things to the surface. After a few days, Dr. Olivier, the surgeon who had performed my emergency operation, came into my room. He had been a constant presence throughout my recovery, keeping me informed and calm during the worst moments. One afternoon, he walked in with my phone in hand. "I think you're strong enough to handle this now," he said gently, placing it on my bedside table. "But I'd understand if you wanted to leave it off a little longer." I picked up the phone slowly, almost afraid of what I might find. The screen flickered to life, showing me a flood of notifications. Over 125 missed calls. Dozens of text messages, voicemails. I knew immediately what it was. My family. They were panicking. They were demanding to know why I hadn't responded. Why I hadn't fixed the situation. They wanted me to come through, to make things right again. But the guilt I had once felt was now replaced by something else. Anger, hurt, and, if I'm honest, a sense of justice. I had been the one to shoulder everything for months, paying for their bills, supporting Rachel, keeping everything together while they sat back and did nothing. Now they were blaming me for the consequences of their actions. I began reading through the messages. The first ones were full of pleading. The familiar guilt trip tactics my mom was so good at. "You have to understand. We're family," she wrote. "We can work this out. Please don't do this to us." Then came the demands. My dad, ever the man of few words, kept it short and sharp. "Call now. Fix this immediately." And Rachel, my own sister, sent a message so filled with vitriol. It nearly made me sick. "How could you be so selfish? You've ruined everything." The more I read, the more I realized how deep the manipulation went. They weren't concerned about me. They weren't concerned about my health or my recovery. They were only concerned with their trip, their inconvenience, their needs. I realized I had spent so much of my life trying to please them, trying to make them proud, only to be left empty and broken in the end. By the time I reached the final message, the anger I had been bottling up was ready to burst. It was from Rachel, the one person I had always tried to protect. "Besides," she wrote, "you might have been left disabled after the accident. Then you definitely would have cancelled everything. That's why I convinced Mom and Dad we should go while everything was still paid for." Those words hit me harder than any injury from the accident. It was cold, calculating, and cruel. I had been treated like a mere afterthought. My own family had justified abandoning me in favor of their own selfish desires. That was the moment I realized I had to change. I wasn't going to let them control my life any longer. I wasn't going to keep sacrificing my happiness for theirs. I had spent too long playing the role of the dutiful daughter, the responsible one, the one who always cleaned up after everyone else. But not anymore. I closed my phone, turned it face down, and for the first time in days, I let the silence wash over me. It was a bitter silence, but it was mine. I felt a sense of clarity. like I had finally seen the truth of the situation. The pain I had been carrying for so long, the years of putting others first, of putting my family's needs before my own, had become a heavy weight on my shoulders. But now, I knew I had to let it go. I reached over and hit the call button, summoning the nurse. When she entered, I gave her a smile that felt unfamiliar, yet freeing. "I'd like to cancel my parents' visitations," I said quietly, "and I don't want any more calls from them." She nodded, and I watched as she left the room, leaving me with nothing but my own thoughts and the quiet peace I had longed for. In that moment, something shifted inside me. The anger I had felt slowly started to fade, replaced by a sense of empowerment. I wasn't their caretaker anymore. I wasn't the one who had to fix everything for them. It was time for me to start living for myself. 3 weeks later, when I was discharged from the hospital, I returned home to a place that felt like a sanctuary. My apartment, once a symbol of solitude, now felt like a space of peace. The friends from work had cleaned it, stocked the fridge, and even placed fresh flowers on the kitchen counter. For the first time in a long time, I didn't have to worry about anyone else's problems or demands. There was no family drama, no guilt trips, no financial requests, just me, my space, and the freedom to focus on healing. I took my time recovering, doing my physical therapy exercises and gradually adjusting to life without the constant weight of my family's needs. For the first time, I could breathe, I could think, and most importantly, I could make decisions that were right for me. Then, about a month after my recovery, something unexpected happened. I received a message from my mom. At first, I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. She had posted about me on Facebook, painting herself and my father as the victims. "My daughter has abandoned us," she wrote, followed by a long list of complaints and guilt. But this time, something was different. My cousin Mary, who had always seen through the drama, stepped in to defend me. The truth began to spread among family members. And soon, my mother's attempt to manipulate the situation backfired. I had let go of the past. But the family's response made me realize how far I had come. The healing was not just physical but emotional. I had learned that the family you choose, your friends, co-workers, even kind strangers, can often mean more than the family you're born into. And so, I took the insurance payout and used it to plan a solo trip to New York. The trip I had always wanted for myself. This time, it was on my terms. It wasn't about anyone else's expectations. It was about my own journey. Thank you for joining me in this story. If you want to hear more life lessons like this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and stay tuned for future videos. Until next time.